In my Japanese Grand Prix review and reaction video, I made a throwaway comment about having to come up with a jingle for the most insane FIA thing of the week. Now it looks like I might actually have to make that jingle because it's all kicking off with the FIA. Again. Robert Reid, who is essentially the second most powerful man in motorsport, has quit his role at the FIA. So really, I need to be saying Robert Reid was essentially the second most powerful man in motorsport. A post was made to social media yesterday that was one of those JPEG statements, outlining that Reid had departed his position as the Deputy President for Sport over a fundamental breakdown in governance standards within motorsport's global governing body. The statement in full said, "After deep reflection, I have made the difficult decision to resign as FIA Deputy President for Sport. I took on this role to help deliver greater transparency, stronger governance, and more collaborative leadership. Over those times, those principles have been increasingly set aside and I can no longer, in good faith, remain part of a system that no longer reflects them. Stepping away was not easy, however staying would have meant compromising what I believe in. This is about principles, not politics. Motorsport deserves leadership rooted in integrity, accountability and respect for process. That's the minimum standard we should all expect and demand." And this all coming from the statement that Robert posted on his Instagram yesterday. And when you look at who liked the post, it was the likes of Andy Priaulx, the Franchitti brothers, and Kevin Hansen, with Dario Franchitti writing an actual message of support on that post. So who is Robert Reid? Well, he's the guy on the left in this photo. If you're somebody who only watches Formula 1 or you watch Formula 1 and a couple of other forms of motorsport, it's a name you might not know that well. But Robert Reid was a rally co-driver for most of his career. In 1991, Reid started working with Richard Burns and they ran a Subaru in the 1991 RAC Rally and finished 16th overall. In 1993, the pair won the British Rally Championship and Richard Burns became the youngest ever winner of the championship that year. In 1997, the pair, who had essentially become a package deal, went to Mitsubishi for the WRC, and in 1998, they finished 6th overall in that championship. In 1999, they moved to Subaru, run by David Richards, who we'll get to in a bit, and they finished runners-up to eventual champion Tommi Mäkinen. And then in 2001, they hit the big time by winning the championship, which made Burns the first Englishman and, at the time of writing, only Englishman to win the championship, but he was the second British driver after Colin McRae, who also won the title with Subaru, but in 1995. In 2002, they moved to Peugeot, where they struggled to find the same form they had while driving in blue. But in 2003, Burns blacked out while driving up the M6 for that year's RAC Rally and had to be withdrawn, and was later diagnosed with a brain tumour. On the 25th of November 2005, 4 years to the day that they won the WRC title, Burns passed away. As mentioned, Robert and Richard were pretty much a package deal. When Burns was taken ill, Reid spent pretty much every day with the guy until the tumour finally took him. And despite offers to navigate for other drivers, Robert turned every single one of them down. He has done only one rally since 2003, a Richard Burns Memorial Rally in 2008, where he was the co-driver for Marco Martin, who was in the car with Richard when he blacked out. That is the sort of bloke that Robert Reid is. He stopped his own racing career to be there for his mate while he was dying. But after stopping his rally career in 2003, sort of going into 2004, Reid has been a prominent figure in British motorsport, holding several high-level positions. He was the performance director of the UK Motorsport Association, or UK MSA, where he set up programs to help develop young driver talent in the country. And he also worked alongside Alexander Wurz to train emerging talent at the FIA Institute Young Driver Excellence Academy, which saw the likes of Philip Eng, Alex Rossi, Stoffel Vandoorne, Richie Stanaway, Timmy Hansen, Jack LeBrock, Jake Dennis, Antoine Hubert, Pietro Fittipaldi, Anton De Pasquale and Seb Morris come through, this being from its establishment in 2011 until it closed in 2015. His other FIA positions include being the Vice President of the WRC Commission, the Chair of the WRC Stewards and Chair of the International Sporting Code Review Commission. When Mohammed Ben Sulayem was elected president in 2021, Reid was elected into this position of, the Deputy President for Sport. Obviously, he has since left that job, leaving it yesterday, the 10th of April 2025. Now, Reid appeared to be happy, or at least willing, to put up with the stuff that was going on, because he could maybe see the potential of what the FIA could achieve. But as his statement said, the longer time went on, the more things started to deviate to the point where he might have felt that he was a willing participant in all of this sort of discourse when he was in fact not. So resigning would be the best course of action to take. He also said that the final straw in all of this was a recent decision made by the FIA to promote the World Rallycross Championship, which is an FIA-sanctioned series, without consulting the Senate or the FIA's World Council. Now, this is something that could carry some element of risk, because the FIA, which is based in Paris in France, is subject to European Union laws, and this might violate competition laws within the European Union. And the FIA series have external promoters and commercial rights holders for this very reason, to prevent conflicts of interest. And all this comes as the FIA, and more so its president, are coming under fire for various things that tend to not have anything to do with the sport they're supposed to be governing. In his 3-year tenure as president, Suliem has been under fire for his comments on women, his approach to Formula 1, and the fact that people in senior positions are dropping like flies as they are sacked or they are quitting. And there's also the more recent swearing fiasco that we will also get to in a bit, because it ties into something else that was just utterly insane. The FIA is also, as reported by the BBC, being sued by Susie Wolff because of the conflict of interest story that blew up but then disappeared within the space of about 48 hours. And also, just in the February of this year, Reid and David Richards, who is the president of MS UK or Motorsport UK, were barred from going into a meeting of the World Motorsport Council because they had refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement. NDAs. I've had to sign a few of those myself in my time on YouTube. But in the FIA, they already had to sign these NDAs because of some of the stuff they discuss in these meetings. If someone was to blab to a team in, say, Formula 1 about what they'd been talking about in these meetings, it might give a team an advantage, an unfair advantage. Now that's fine, but recently a newer, stricter version of that document was drawn up, which Reid and Richards refused to sign. While the previous NDAs, which had been in effect as far back as Moseley and maybe even further to Balestri, were seen as being okay for reasons I just outlined, these newer ones have been seen as a way of suppressing any negative press about the president. And things are made a little bit more, convenient might be the word to use here, or at least coincidental might be the word to use here, is that the FIA and the president by extension are coming under all this fire and all this criticism about different things that are happening and all of these, I won't call them scandals, but certainly bits and pieces that have been coming out. And then the president turns around and says, why don't we go back to the V10s in Formula 1? Something that's got a lot of people excited, when really, it's all a distraction. It's just something that's been cooked up to make people forget that they hate the president and hate the FIA for about 20 minutes. And it's actually picked up some traction. This thing's been going on for a few weeks now. But I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it looks like the vote to bring them back isn't going to go through. But crucially, this is election year for the FIA. Those NDAs have fueled speculation that this will go through into the June General Assembly, where changes might be made to make it harder for somebody to stand against Suliem at the next election. If nobody stands against him, then he literally has to get just one vote, maybe from himself, to win. But there might be a silver lining, if you want to call it that. The presidency is limited to 4 terms, totaling 12 years, something that Jean Todt filled. Now, this must have been a rule implemented post-Moseley because Max served for 16 years as president before resigning in the wake of the row between FOTA and the FIA in 2009. So in turn, this has fueled speculation in the last 24 hours that somebody could run against Suliem in the presidential election. But there is a rule that has to be followed. The candidate cannot be over 70 years old when they go up for election, which I'm sure that some countries would love to put in as a rule. But either way, that rule excludes David Richards, who is 72 and has been linked with a presidential bid in the last few months. And to be honest, I didn't know there was an age limit either. But that rule also excludes the likes of Ross Brawn, who turned 70 this year. Reid, meanwhile, is 59, so is able to run if he wishes. But the people involved in the FIA sports are twigging onto all of this. Recently, the drivers in the World Rally Championship banded together to form the World Rally Drivers Association and started a protest against the FIA when Adrian Formal was fined €10,000 for swearing in a TV interview when he was describing a stage he'd driven at the Swedish rally. The World Rally Drivers Alliance called the punishment unacceptable, and that the fine was completely disproportionate to the average income and budget for that particular category. But while I'm here, I might as well read the whole thing to you. The rally drivers and co-drivers of WRDA, the World Rally Drivers Alliance, inspired by their GPDA, Grand Prix Drivers Association colleagues, joined together to express their opinion, seek clarity and cooperate towards a brighter future. First and foremost, we wish to state that, as is the case with every sport, competitors must abide by the referee's decision. The respect of this principle is not in question. We are not all full-time professionals, yet we all face the same extreme conditions with the same relentless passion. Whether navigating through dense forests, across frozen roads in the dead of night, or through the dust of treacherous gravel tracks, we push ourselves to the limit, against the elements, against the clock, and against our own limits. Beyond racing, our role has expanded. Today, rally drivers and co-drivers are not only athletes but also entertainers, content creators, and constant media figures. From the smartphones of spectators to the official WRC cameras, we are expected to be available at all times, before, during, and after competition, from dawn till dusk. WRDA has always recognised our responsibilities and commitment to collaborate in a constructive way with all stakeholders, including the FIA president, in order to promote and elevate our outstanding sport for the benefit of all. In recent months, however, there has been an alarming increase in the severity of the sanctions imposed for minor, isolated, and unintentional language lapses. This has reached an unacceptable level. And I've done several videos about the whole swearing thing, so I'll just recap it incredibly briefly here. Swearing in the heat of the moment over the radio, or in the case of being interviewed in your car after sliding around at 100 miles an hour, should be given a bit of leeway, since you're going to be buzzing off adrenaline. And even then, if there was no swearing after a stage in the World Rally Championship, we wouldn't have had Marcus Grönholm's "into the ass of Timo" vox pop. But swearing in an official press conference, you probably shouldn't be doing that. But at least get a warning first. But the rally drivers do have a point about these sanctions, because at the Japanese Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz was penalised for something utterly mundane. Sainz, who coincidentally is the son of a rally driver, was fined €20,000, 10,000 of those suspended, for being late to the national anthem ceremony by, well, at least he estimates, 5 seconds. That's it. Why? Because he was seeing a doctor about stomach issues. It's not like he'd bunked off and forged a note from his dad, ending it with a Bart Simpson-esque, "Please forgive my handwriting, I've busted whichever hand it is I write with." He had received confirmation from said doctor, that's why he was late. And if you've ever been signed off work sick, those doctor's notes are like a legally binding document. At least they are here, I mean, your country may vary. 10 grand for 5 seconds. That works out at €2,000 per second he was late, which is just utterly insane. I mean, yes, you do have to respect the host nation and you need to be there for their national anthem because it's, their national anthem, but Carlos had a legitimate reason for being late. He was seeing a doctor because he had stomach issues. He had a legitimate reason to not be there on time, and he gets fined €2,000 per second he was late. So naturally, there's going to be people commenting on all of this across various channels on YouTube and various outlets across an internet. And before you start commenting here, I would just like to advise you to hang 5 before typing. Because if your solution involves the word just, so they should just, or why don't they just, or just do, or whatever, it's probably not that simple. Because one of the ones I've seen crop up lately is that F1 needs to ditch the FIA. There is a bit of an issue with that because Formula 1 is an FIA product. The FIA owns Formula 1, they just lease the commercial rights out to Liberty Media, FOM, whatever you want to call them. Those commercial rights are handled by somebody else, but Formula 1 is an FIA series. So then you might be thinking, well, just do a breakaway series. But there's another problem with that. Well, it's actually 2. The first is that the teams have all signed the latest iteration of the Concord Agreement, which is scheduled to start on the 1st of January 2026, and includes all the provisions for Cadillac to enter as the long elusive 11th team. The second issue is the Formula 1 teams have attempted breakaways before. They actually did start a breakaway series, but threatened a second, and neither of them worked. Now there is actually a third issue which only came to my attention while putting all of this together. The Concord Agreement actually requires 3 signatures. The teams, FOM, or the commercial rights holder, or at least the boss of the commercial rights holders, which in this case is Stefano Domenicali, and the president of the FIA. Mohammed Ben Sulayem has not signed this document. The teams and Domenicali have. So they can make the breakaway series after all. Yes, we're going to get V10s back. No, it's not that simple. The teams have committed to 2026 by this point. It's not going to be as simple as just walking away and setting up a series for 2026 or even 2027. Too many resources have been invested. too much money has been invested, even if it is capped in Formula 1, and the sponsors involved are paying for teams to race in Formula 1. Not GP1, not Formula Uno, not We Go Zoom Zoom Grand Prix World Series, TM. They're paying for Formula 1. See kart in the late 1990s and into the early 2000s. Kart had the teams, the drivers and the sponsors, but the Indy Racing League had the Indy 500. Chip Ganassi was the first to cross the picket line because Target held all the power. Then the other teams went into the Indy Racing League because the sponsors wanted them at Indianapolis, not a big f*** you race at Michigan. And the F1 drivers are noticing all of this as well, with George Russell, the head of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, asking where all of this ends. And talks of driver strikes in regards to the things that the FIA wants to implement increase by the day. The South African Grand Prix drivers' strike of 1982, or when the drivers locked themselves in a building as those rockets descended on Jeddah a couple of years ago, or last year, I've lost all concept of time. But this could all backfire. You could have people resigning over the morals and ethics and principles at the FIA going down the drain, but that could just make it easier for people loyal to one individual to take their place and help solidify said power. Something that has happened in dictatorships and empires from day dot up to, well, now, come to think of it. So could Robert Reid, or maybe even Susie Wolff, as has been rumoured, go in for the presidential race this year? Because obviously Ross Brawn and also David Richards can't due to their age. Is it something that could happen, or maybe Susie might have to not go into it because of Toto being, a team principal at Mercedes? But at the same time, Jean Todt was president of the FIA and he was associated with Ferrari for a very long time. But that said, we didn't really get that much in the way of Ferrari international assistance in that time, unless you count the iffy engines from 2019 and that super secret deal that they made, if you want to call it that. But I don't know. This thing isn't probably going to go away anytime soon, so be prepared for more videos like this over the course of the year. It depends on how much new information comes out, really, because I'm not going to keep doing the same thing every time something utterly insane happens with the FIA. But like I always say, leave your own thoughts down in the comments section underneath this video and get a discussion going. So then, a look at the current situation with Robert Reid quitting his role at the FIA and everything else that is going along with it. If this thing has made you think things about the thing, then do like this thing so Al Gore and his rhythm can do their thing. And for more things like this from the channel, get the subscribe button thing clicked and ring the bell thing so you never miss out on any thing from this channel. Massive thanks as ever go out to the rad lads over at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help support me at a more personal level, then I will have a link to Patreon down in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliates with the F1 store, and other bits and pieces down there that you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks if you just want to do a one and done kind of donation, and there's also memberships for Patreon without the Patreon. So until next time, I've been Aidan, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.